Venezuela's defense minister Vladimir Padrino Lopez has accused the U.S. of deliberately fueling instability in Latin America and the Caribbean to seize the region's natural resources. Lopez described the recent detention of a Venezuelan oil tanker by U.S. forces in Caribbean waters as piracy, alleging Washington seeks political domination and economic control of South America under the guise of security operations. He then warned that Venezuela won't be intimidated by increased U.S. military activity near its coastline, insisting the country can defend its airspace and sovereignty. The Venezuelan government has filed a formal complaint with the International Maritime Organization with Vice President Delcy Rodriguez, invoking international conventions on freedom of navigation.
They intend to wage war across Latin America and the Caribbean. And to the people of the United States, whom we hold in great respect, we say they intend once again to return young taxpayers of North American society to their homes in coffins, in black bags, and in urns. From here, we continue to call for peace, not only for the people of Venezuela. We are clear that the idea of homeland extends far beyond Venezuelan borders. So the people of the United States must listen to the call for peace, for synderesis, to the need to resolve conflicts through dialogue and politics and not through war. Unfortunately, supremacism has taken over the current administration of the United States, and they intend to force Venezuela to its knees under a scheme of de facto siege, beginning with sanctions, which are not legal instruments, illegal instruments, sanctions that impact the economy, that impact production, that impact the health of the Venezuelan people. Recently we have seen how a civilian merchant oil tanker was detained, interdicted here in the waters of the Caribbean, specifically south of Grenada, Trinidad, and Tobago. There, already heading into the Atlantic, a vessel exercising free trade and free navigation, carrying Venezuelan oil to other international markets. This constitutes a flagrant violation of international law, of the United Nations Charter, a violation of the right to free navigation, a violation of free trade. They intend to close the Caribbean to the interests of the United States. They intend to politically dominate states. They intend to steal, to appropriate the natural resources of the hemisphere, especially South America. And that, of course, the Bolivarian National Armed Forces are taking into account, because we, I repeat, are going to defend the concept of sovereignty, and the government of the United States must know that we are not going to surrender. That act of piracy that has just been committed in the Caribbean Sea. It is an act of piracy, a crude, gross act of theft, a cowardly act, an imposition of force to appropriate things that do not belong to them, resources that do not belong to them. We ask from here, from Venezuela, what will become of the lives of the crews of those vessels? They are private companies, but we are concerned about the lives of the crews of those vessels. Where are they? Who is holding them hostage?
Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump has defended his administration's hardline posture towards Venezuela, declining to rule out further action against Caracas, while framing the confrontation as part of a broader crackdown on drug trafficking. Speaking to reporters, Trump refused to disclose whether more Venezuelan oil assets could be seized, citing security concerns, but said U.S. authorities had drastically reduced narcotics smuggling by sea and were now intensifying operations on land.
I also want to ask about another country that you're targeting, which of course is Venezuela. Do you intend on seizing more oil assets from Venezuela and other tankers?
I wouldn't tell you that. I mean, it wouldn't be very smart for me to tell you that. You know, we're supposed to be a little bit secretive. You're a very big-time reporter, and I don't think I want to tell a big-time reporter or a small-time reporter that, but we are knocking out drugs at levels that nobody's ever seen before. We knocked out 96% of the drugs coming in by water, and nobody can figure out who the 4%. I wouldn't want to be the 4% either, but 96% of the drugs coming in by water. Every one of those boats you see get shot down. You just saved 25,000 American lives. But we knocked out 96% of the drugs coming in by water, and now we're starting by land, and by land is a lot easier. And that's going to start happening. And we're not going to have people destroying our youth, destroying our families. Forget about youth, everybody. You ever see a family with the fentanyl or cocaine? Colombia has at least 3 cocaine factories. That's a different country. We're not happy about it, but we're stopping it. And we've stopped it now on water. You don't even find boats on water. You don't even see fishing boats on water. You want to go fishing in that area? Does anybody want to go fishing in that area? I don't think so. So I just want to say this. We have now a strong border. A year and a half ago, we had millions of people pouring through. Now we have nobody coming in through our border. And we have a strong country. We have a country that's respected again. We're going to keep it that way. And we're not going to let people kill 300,000 people a year with drugs.
You talked about land strikes happening soon. Is there anything at this point that can prevent that? And is the objective, if you make that decision?
Well, I don't want to say that, but it's not only land strikes on Venezuela. It's land strikes on horrible people that are bringing in drugs and killing our people. You know, if we were in a war and we lost 300,000 people in a year, because that's what the real number is. It's not 100. You know, you keep hearing 100. And it's a lot worse than that because the families are devastated when they lose their child. If we were in a war and we lost 2 or 300,000, but I think it's more than 300,000, and that's a war. That's like a war that would be unparalleled. Nobody's ever seen anything like that. And that's what's happening. So it doesn't necessarily have to be in Venezuela. It's people that are bringing in drugs to our country are targets.
All right, analyst Rotimi Michael Kade joins me now from New York. Hi, Rotimi. Happy weekend to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on Our Rise of America. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you very clearly.
Good. 96% of the drugs coming into the U.S. by water are coming in from Venezuela. Where does your president get his statistics from?
Well, first of all, I'm not in the president's team, so obviously the president would have a lot of resources at his beck and call. So coming up with that number is not going to be a very difficult thing for him. However, that number seems to be a little bit more outrageous because we know that one of the biggest actors when it comes to drug peddling is Colombia. And just as the president said, they have factories where they actually make these drugs. So some people have said that that is a wrong aggression on Venezuela. Perhaps maybe the same strength or the same aggression should have been passed on to Colombia, where we know that that's the hub of, drug making that we've seen in the United States.
Beautiful submission, Rotimi, I must say. Now, let me take you up on that. So why then is it not proper to suspect that President Trump has got something up his sleeves against Maduro if he's not attacking Colombia with the same energy?
Well, we don't know. Personally, I don't know if the president has a personal beef with the Venezuela president. But we've known that Venezuela as a government, not Venezuelans, they've not been at par with the United States for a very long time, even before the advent of President Trump. So, but President Trump is going all out, more aggressive this time to what in his term, what he accuses Venezuela of doing, not just bringing drugs to the United States, but also in some way undermining and also supporting United States enemies, so to speak, the association with China and also with Russia. And they see that as somewhat undermining the political hemisphere where the United States actually reigns supreme.
Now, he has threatened to even seize more ships off the coast of Venezuela, coming in from Venezuela. Well, if not all sea ships are loaded with drugs, what could this mean for the U.S. economy?
Well, the White House has made it very clear that number one, there's an embargo, there's a sanction against Venezuelan oil, which means Venezuela cannot sell oil or transport those oil um, vessels around the South American to another continent. So that is the reason why, one of the reasons why the ship or the oil tanker or ship, I should say, was actually seized based on the fact that there was sanction in selling those oil to other nations. And we're most likely going to be seeing more of it. We understand that the ship, the oil ship that was seized by the United States would dock at somewhere in Texas, a seaport called Galveston. Perhaps maybe we're going to be seeing more in the future, but that's not a question. The question on everybody's mind as far as this is concerned is, for how long is the United States going to be doing this? Venezuela just reached out to Russia, President Vladimir Putin, who, of course, showed and gave his assurances of support to Venezuela. Don't forget that while the United States is sanctioning Venezuela, Venezuela is already forming and forging alliances with China, Iran, and Russia. So the United States is not happy about that because of the fact that the effrontery of Venezuela to actually support rather than coming to the table, the United States and resolving the difference.
Rotimi, well, analysts have been saying that what we're seeing now is just a consequence of the populist policies and corrupt practices that began under the Chavez administration, Bolivarian Revolution, and then continued under Maduro. What's your take on this?
Well, that's the narrative out there that's been forged, which is, of course, we know the mainstream media has been on the Venezuela government and successive government, and this particular president is a protege of President Chavez, who stood, against the United States policy, against the United States oppression, as he said. And of course, if you want to look at the corruption index of Venezuela, looking at the poverty rates in Venezuela, there's absolutely no doubt that the corruption in that country is really, really high at the astronomical level. But at the same time, that could not be the basis for, invading, perhaps, sanctioning the country. But the United States is very particular about, especially under this regime, under this administration, I should say, about regime change. President Trump has now made a categorical statement in that regard, but the moves we've seen in a couple of months shows that the United States president do not want Maduro to spend one more day in the presidency of Venezuela.
Well, that's one narrative, right, Rotimi? Another narrative is that all this power is about power play. It's not just oil grab, but power grab, an attempt to sideline the Congress and expand presidential authority at home for Trump. How would you explain this?
Well, the president cannot go to war with another country without approval of Congress. And some Democrats categorize the actions of the president as war against another country. As a matter of fact, one of the Democratic senators said that the president is sleepwalking into war with Venezuela. He needs the approval of Congress. But the president said, well, these are isolated cases, and I don't necessarily need the Congress bureaucratic processes that will delay the actions of the White House, which means Venezuela has been importing drugs into the country and killing millions of people. And for the president to wait until, debates and, sideline meetings with congressmen and women, it could take a longer time at the expense of the people. So, in other words, the president is saying that, well, I'm doing the right thing. I'm taking, the right steps. This is what the United States needs at this time, and he's not going to back down doing that. And we've not seen a lot of opposition, even within his own party, the Republican Party, both in the House and the Senate.
Okay, so tell us, Rotimi, what are your observations or recommendations? What do you think will make the U.S. President Donald Trump backpedal on this narrative or lift the sanctions?
Well, I think, like just as I said, the president do not want the Maduro government to stay in power for another hour. That has been made. Those are not my words. These are the president's words. He actually want Venezuela to have a bit of a fresh air in terms of, leadership. And he has not made that as a secret. But however, there are democratic ways of doing that. The United States have tried in the past, even under the Chavez government, to use the democratic way of, deposing the president. Again, we don't know the strategy of the White House, why there's a need for regime change. From the outside, personally, I can't give you, my opinion about that, because my opinion is inconsequential. President Trump will actually do whatever he wants to do because he has the mandate of the people. But the best way to go about this, my recommendation, obviously, is going to be through the democratic means. We already have the opposition leader in Venezuela currently, who supports the strikes that the United States has, been meted out within the waters of Venezuela, and also the seized oil ship that was taken by the United States, to the shores of Texas. We've seen those political pressure being, we've seen rallies also in Venezuela. That could take a longer way of doing things, but at the same time, I think that's the most effective way of doing things. Nobody says the United States is not looking towards that direction, but the main purpose of this escalation between these two nations is still very much unknown, even to myself.
Okay, so how then can this resort to foreign threat? How does this amount of foreign threat for the U.S. as we wrap up this conversation?
Well, U.S. will put as much pressure as they can on Venezuela, both in sanctions, selling their oil, sanctions against the president's family. At least 3 of his nephews are among the people that are being sanctioned in different ways. There's also sanctions, which includes, companies, United States companies doing businesses in Venezuela. This, in the long term or in the medium term, could actually cripple the economy of Venezuela. And by so doing, will make the people rise against the government. And, they could call for, a administration change or regime change, whatever you want to call it, and that could be a more of a conventional way of doing things, whether sanction works this time. But over time, because of the abundance of resources that Venezuela actually has, and, despite the sanctions, we've actually not seen those come into fruition. We've seen pockets of opposition here and there, but it has not, snowballed into some sort of tsunami kind of pressure that could push Maduro out of government.
Thank you, Rotimi. But just before we let you go, let's touch on the Epstein files. Now, the photographs released with President Trump in them are beginning to look like something you call an evidence, but it just cannot be bothered by that. Would you say it was just a happenstance?
No, I think these are past events. These are things that happened in the past. There's absolutely no doubt in the United States that Jeffrey Epstein's, the late Jeffrey Epstein, is a socialite. He, he actually mingled in the halls of power with the most powerful personalities that you could see. Former President Bill Clinton was in this so-called redacted photos. And I do not see any wrongdoing right now because of presidents, sharing same pictures with him. He has said it before that Jeffrey Epstein used to be his friend, but right now he is no longer his friend. Even right before he became president. And some of the other personalities that we've seen, like Dershowitz, right on the screen, lawyer, also Steve Bannon, who also was an associate, Bill Gates, Prince Philip, etc. These are people that are his friends, but all of them have denied any wrongdoing, that they never participated. As a matter of fact, they're not aware that he ran a kind of a pedophile ring, which got him convicted, and of course, later died in prison.
Over 100,000 photos released. Well, I would agree with you. They were friends. Jeffrey Epstein and President Trump were friends before the fallout in the early 2000s. Well, you could see from the photos released that Jeffrey Epstein is well connected with some of the most powerful people in the world. How do you see him using his contact to navigate this ordeal?
Well, there's absolutely no doubt, because with all the investigation that has been carried out, it shows that Jeffrey Epstein was guilty. He actually, parried some of these girls and, gave them out, in sort of a traffic way, and he, even though denied any wrongdoing, it shows that evidences that shows that he actually was in that business. And of course, some of his friends might not be aware. Well, we give them the benefit of the doubt, because currently, right now, we're expecting the Epstein files to be out by 19th of this month. That's next week, where we're going to perhaps maybe see the full extent of the investigation, and whoever might have been involved in that obviously is going to face the wrath of the law. That is the standard. However, this is one of the mind-blowing pictures never seen before. Even so, though some of the people in that particular picture are protected their privacy. They redacted, some of their faces. So it could be something much, much bigger than what we're seeing right now. And it could also be something that is not much of a big deal.
We've got to let you go. Thank you very much indeed, Rotimi Michael Kade, for your time on the Rise America today.